Hello and welcome to Footbet, the gambling portal. Are you a favourites backer, or do you prefer the glory of backing a long shot? Do you choose the big wins, or are you happy to pick up small gains in the pursuit of long-term profits? Well, ever since David upset the odds and stuck one right between Goliath's eyes, man has laboured to put himself on one side of that argument or the other. And I don't think it'll surprise you too much to know that scientists have laboured long and hard over reams and reams of statistics and literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of anecdotal evidence in an attempt to discover what has become a holy grail of gambling. Is there an easy way to make money using one system? And I have to tell you, they all came up with pretty much the same conclusion, with some interesting twists albeit, but more about that later. To understand their conclusions, we have to go back to 1949 and a post-war US Army hospital in Lexington, Kentucky, US, after the Second World War. It was there that a young army officer named Richard Griffith noticed that his fellow convalescers, who were cash rich and time rich too, were very keen on the local horse track, but all of them seemed to lose heavily. On second look, he noticed that they all had a tendency to back outsiders because, as they told him, they were better value. This didn't make much sense to the young Griffith. If that was the case, he thought to himself, what was the point of there being a favourite in the first place? And who would put money on it if it was a no-value bet? So Griffith went off and studied over 2,000 races across the US, their results and the price of each winner, and discovered that there was a huge bias running across all these horse races. In short, the favourite was far more valuable than the long shot. In fact, 55% more valuable to be exact, with a long shot likely to return as little as minus 60%. That means if you put £100 on, don't expect to get more than £40 in return, while favourites returned as little as minus 5%, which means that if you put £100 on, you should expect to get, statistically, £95 of your money back. What is remarkable about Griffith's study is that in the 60 years since, dozens upon dozens of science dollars have been spent on similar studies, and virtually all of them, barring an interesting enclave in Hong Kong and Japan, have said the same thing. One study from a political economist went a little further and claimed that the bookies skewed the market in that way because they expected a profit to be taken by those in the know, i.e. the horse's connections, or indeed the dog's connections, and needed to manipulate the market to make any profit. This was a plausible theory, and one long suspected by horse race punters. For many years this was considered acceptable, but it was blown out of the water by a groundbreaking study by Michael Caine, David Law and David Peel, three Scottish scientists, who decided to do a study particularly on football fixed odds prices in 1991 to 1992 in the UK Premier League. They discovered that despite the market for each match being fixed, by that I mean as in the bookies could not change the prices to manipulate the market in any way, the value figures were exactly those of Griffith 43 years previously. Well, this is all very interesting, I hear you say, but what does it actually mean for us as punters today? Well, first, it blows a couple of so-called professional methods of gambling out of the water, primarily that of the theory recently expanded by a rather cocky ex-banker in the News of the World in June 2009. He claimed, and I won't mention him by name, to have made £1 million on Betfair by laying the favourite alongside a long shot in every race in the UK on any given day. On page there was a picture of his Betfair account holding exactly £1.2 million, but with the story he also said that his biggest loss was just over 1 million. So I, and 60 years of scientific research, suggest he's just gambling and getting lucky. Like his old job, he'll lose that money in a very big rush. All this research has specific benefits for us here at Footbet too. As well as being a precious nugget of information to add to our gambling portfolio, to tuck away and use to form the processes that we are going to use this season to regulate a healthy return, these scientific discoveries have added new armoury to our attack. Now let me explain. Kane, Law and Peel's research on UK fixed odds and correct score betting was incredibly detailed, but it is obviously written by three scientists, although enormously talented, who have only a basic knowledge of betting and absolutely no understanding of how football gambling works. Now, I've read this, and let me make it clear, it is not in football speak at all. It is perhaps because of this lack of understanding that they fail to glean a few particularly juicy nuggets of information from these reams of stats. While they pretty much nailed the fact that the best you can hope to achieve backing the result of a football match at any way, at any odds, was to lose 5.1% of your money, they fail to highlight four, yes that's 4 bets on football that statistically do actually make a profit, and it's in their stats. I have to say, as a natural cynic of certain systems, I was quite surprised, but I have checked it out, and it does work, and I will be using it, as the nutritionists might say, as part of a balanced diet of bets next season. If you want to get involved in that, click on the subscribe button now. Which actually brings me quite handily to our prospects for next season. Last season we made over £7,000 profit, and on my own admission elsewhere on this site, it was a very poor season. I think with more knowledge and a better run, I'm very confident for next season, but not too confident, as we've seen, because that's always a path that ends in tears.